This is really the dark side of some of these messages. And the caste system of races and things like this come back and led to the development of the SS. And in conclusion, it says, it was after all Blavatsky who pointed out the supreme occult significance of the swastika. So that's how some of the manifestations are made in our world. Hitler, I'm sure you well know, had his own spiritual follower too that was plugged in a lot of this. His deathbed quote was, "Follow Hitler, I have initiated him into the secret doctrine, opened his centers of vision, and given him a means to communicate with the powers." So we can see that not always does good come out of people when they have access to these powers. And in fact, understanding this more helped me to really understand how people could do terrible, terrible things. I understand the SS was led into this religion, and in fact, they were taught that reincarnation was a possibility to these people in the concentration camps. And that's why they had no remorse about sending people to death, because they understood they were doing them a favor. They would come back in karma as a better person when they would come back. So that was exploited for very, very dark things. I know none of you would agree with. And then, of course, there was Tibetan monks and others that were very prolific in the area, but only few historians know much about that. I just put in a couple quotes to try to bring things to the modern day. David Spangler, I'm sure you're aware of, medium, also involved in another related group. One of his more controversial quotes from his well-known book, Reflections on the Christ, says that Lucifer comes in to give us the final gift of wholeness. If we accept it, then he is free, and we are free. This is the Luciferic initiation, is one that many people now in the days ahead will be facing for the initiation of the New Age. This is tied in very much to Marilyn Ferguson, of course, and the Aquarian conspiracy. Medium Barbara Marx Hubbard is someone also well-known, not as well-known to me, but a name who comes up frequently and influential today. She says a few things that are also very different, too. One of her quotes is, the choice is, do you wish to become a natural Christ, a universal human, or do you wish to die? People either change or die. That is a choice. And I think that could be construed in a lot of ways. Do you die spiritually or other kind of ways? But it gets a little more explicit in one of the messages from her channel Spirits that was published. This is a message that came channeled from one of her connections in Spirits. Out of the full spectrum of human personality, 1/4 is electing to transcend, 1/4 is destructive, and are defective seeds. Now as we approach the quantum shift from the creator human to the co-creative human, the human is the inventor of godlike power. The destructive 1/4 must be eliminated from the social body. Fortunately, you are not responsible for this act. We are, talking of these spirit entities. We are in charge of God's selection process for planet Earth. He selects, we destroy. We are the riders of the pale horse, death. Which is, that's, again, a message that we'd like not to look at. Aleister Crowley, obviously his influence is huge. Try to find out what his experiences were that led to his interest. I know he had a bad childhood as far as relation to very strict religious upbringing. The only thing I could find from a couple of references was that as he got into what was called in literature a homoerotic experience, led to an encounter with an immanent deity shortly after that, and that was by his own words, and then a start of occult interest. So then he began spirit contact, and first focusing on guardian angels via a methodology developed by Abraham Malin, and then led to one of his most famous works, the Alamatra Working, where he designed to create a vortex between the seen and unseen, according to his word. And he conjured out of this vortex a presence, Lamb, who manifested, and I'm sure you've seen the picture, looks very much like the alien grays that we see pictures of today, and then developed this new magic built on the Enochian magic of Dr. D. He also received revelation from Iwas, the Book of the Law, who said that he was a messenger of the forces ruling this earth. Again, strange quotes that I come across. I'm not reading the things, everybody should love each other. We all understand that's good. But some more curious things here. With my hawk's head, I peck at the eyes of Jesus as he hangs on the cross. I don't know the intention of that. I do know he had a lot of beef with traditional Christianity. He also said the serpent Satan is not the enemy of man, but he who made the gods of our race. However, he looked in the future, said there's a magical operation of maximum importance, the initiation of a new eon. When it becomes necessary to utter a word, the whole planet must be bathed in blood. This bloody sacrifice is the critical point of the world ceremony of the crown, and conquering child is Lord of the eon. Obviously, that didn't make him a lot of friends when this was published, and the British press, as you know, called him the wickedest man in the world. in his further elaboration of this new age, the age of Horus, would overthrow Judeo-Christianity, and he worked to that end. And unfortunately, his faithfulness to his spirits, they did not lead him to have a very happy life. He sort of finished up in a very tragic case, including the loved ones around him. Edgar Casey, again, trying to find his roots of where he got involved. His family was well connected with Freemasonry. He got interested in that and opened some doors. And then he had a hypnosis event that led to these trance-induced psychic abilities. Invited to the White House, President Wilson used him. He saw himself as a Christian, but he had a theology that was opposed to orthodoxy. He talked much about Christ consciousness, the reincarnation of Christ, and other biblical characters that were recycled throughout the history of the Bible. He talked about the concept of self-deification and hidden wisdom that can aid in man's quest. And he also said that there'd be a great initiate in the future that would lead humanity in the age of Aquarius. So he personifies it in a person in the future that's coming. Unfortunately, some of his predictions, although he was a marvel in his day, did not come to pass. Atlantis did not arise in the late 60s, which was one of the things people were anticipating, as well as the San Francisco earthquake sometime after that. But the thing he's probably most known for is some of his messages about the pyramid and the information that will be available to people at that time. And Manly P. Hall, who I know many of you know, really found this fascinating. Commenting on Edward Casey's work, he says, "The time will come when the secret wisdom shall again be the dominating religious and philosophical urge of the world. The day is at hand when the doom of dogma shall be sounded. Out of the cold ashes of lifeless creeds, however like, shall rise phoenix-like the ancient mysteries." And another quote related to this, "The dying God shall rise again." And again, this was a concept back out of Samaria through Egypt. "The secret room and the house of the hidden places shall be rediscovered. The pyramid again shall rise as an ideal emblem of solidarity," and on and on. Jack Parsons was a gentleman who followed Crowley. He became the head of activity in the U.S., but he was known to the rest of the world as the founder of Aerojet and the co-founder of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. He was considered the person most critical by other people in the space program as being the person that led to the success of the U.S. space program. He was the real guru in the business of developing rockets and going into space. As the top occultist in the U.S., he emerged as a disciple of Crowley and head of the OTO. As you know, he called himself the Antichrist. He was very explicit in where he stood on things. And then he did this process that he's most known for, the Babylon working in January 46, worked with L. Ron Hubbard, curious pair, to open a portal for the great whore Babylon, according to them, and who was intended to be a consort for the Antichrist. And they say that they reported that they saw an entity that was actually released in the world. Again, this smoky type appearance. Unfortunately, he had a very sad ending as well, too. He was betrayed by Mr. Hubbard and lost his wife and his job. Had a very violent death. But I find it very curious. All these things have a very curious time frame. Between July 45 and 48, we have atomic testing, this Babylon working, the death of Crowley. We have the Roswell and UFO sightings, finding of the Dead Sea Scrolls and the ancient texts, which talk about some of these events, and the finding of an Israel state, are all things that have a very interesting aspect as we get into these last days. Talking to Roswell and UFO, this is a big part of the conference here. We'll have some people who are experts in these areas. Jacques Vallée is probably one of the best-known ufologists. His character was based, I think, in Close Encounters, the movie. His finding, after many years of research, he sort of said it fit a classic historical demonological pattern as far as their behavior and their communications. We know cattle mutilations are a key part, and the key to that is this whole interest in reproductive organs and technology. And then we have these abduction events and genetic reproductive experiments. But the messages that come from people who come back with a message from these contactees, and Professor Mack reports he estimates 4 to 5 million people in the U.S. have these events. Gallup has said up to 3% of the U.S. public. These messages usually have a common theme: unite the world religions and government, accept the ET creators is coming soon. But however, some of these most famous ufologists that are regulars on radio, household names, have told me one of their frustrations, and they just sort of laugh it off, is that these messages are often caught lying. Sometimes they masquerade as a relative of the person who's deceased, and then you find out later that they did not know enough. They didn't do their homework, and people know better, so then they sort of change their personas. The Vatican is very, very interested in this, as you're hearing the records right now, in preparing the public for disclosure of extraterrestrials. Father Malachi Martin started that discussion. Linda Moulton Howell even told me on my show that the government knows that there's non-humans dispersed among us right now, which is an amazing thought. I'm going to skip on from this because we're running slow on time. Just mention quickly that within Catholicism, they've had events in the last days, were perceived to be Marian apparitions, very strange events, and usually there's a message that's concealed. The third secret of Fatima is debated on whether it was really truly revealed or not in 2000. I know Cardinal Ratzinger, before he became Pope, said that it had a last days apocalyptic theme, which is different than what we were told a few years ago. And then we have 10 secrets from this other well-known apparition that are supposed to be revealed in the future as well. That one has been a little bit more controversial in the church, according to my reading. Then we have Maitreya, and I'm getting here to the end of our list here. Maitreya is known as the avatar of the Aquarian Age. He claims to have messiahship that was foretold by all of these world religions, that he fulfills all of their prophecies of this upcoming leader. It's reported that he's moved from Tibet to London, and he has these appearances where he suddenly appears, does a healing event, disappears. Most of this information has come from his herald, Benjamin Krim, who's been well known for a long time. The thing that really got people's attention was this publication in the world's newspapers that Christ is now here in a press conference. In the day of declaration that is supposed to happen sometime when every TV channel will have this message. He's been involved also with the United Nations, and he receives these messages from the Masters of Wisdom. Someone asked him to try to sort of cut to the chase, or what is this plan? And he says, what is the plan? It includes the installation of a new world government and a new world religion under Maitreya. So I think that's probably the clearest statement I've heard of the goal. He also has comments about Lucifer, too, that were intriguing to some. He says Lucifer is the name of the great angel, not an upstart at heaven who revolted against God and was put down. That's a complete misinterpretation. Lucifer means light. It's the name of the angel who ensouls the human kingdom. So his message is consistent with some of these other people that we've seen. Now, going from that, I've covered much of my time here. I'm going to mention a few of them in the Bible because we have a little information about what was the significance from someone other than me. I think probably the most important event happened at the very beginning because this story is also encapsulated in all other histories and mythologies of ancient kingdoms. This involved the vision of the serpent in the garden. The original term, as I understand Hebrew, is Nakash, which also can be interpreted as the shining one. We often think of a snake. I think you all know better than that. He was called a shining one. He was said he was more crafty in the translations, which their word means shrewd or sly than any other living being. The main features that happened in his discussion, his first communication to humankind, was he began an open challenge, much like Enki, of the statements of the Creator God. He did misstate some of the words. He sort of twisted things a little bit. And then he even questioned whether God had even made the comments, playing a lot of doubts in Eve's mind, and questioned God's motives. He said, God does not want you to have this information. And unfortunately, Eve responded with an error of her own. She said that she sort of added to God's word, which is a real error, and I think that's a sort of a form of legalism. She even added the fact that you couldn't even touch the fruit, which is not what we have a record that God said, which compounded the problem. But the key thing that the serpent promised was that you could have your eyes opened, or illumination, and be like God, in effect being a rival to God or being something at His level, which again is a goal of Illumination and occult and Hermetic disciplines for millennia. She accepted his offer, it says in that record, because it pleased her eye and it was good to eat. So we have some human shortcomings there. And she desired to gain wisdom, which in and of itself is not a bad thing. Elsewhere in the Bible, it commends people for seeking godly wisdom, but it also says the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. So she's seeking wisdom while yet turning away from the fear of her Creator. The aftermath of it is what's important. Their eyes were opened. So they did open. They were illumined. But it did not turn out like they thought. There was the outcome was shame and the loss of a bliss state that they had. And then they ended up being driven away from their own Creator. They hid from the God who seek to commune with them and who still pursued them. And then they began blaming each other and the deceit of the serpent. It's curious to note that God punished the serpent, not for anything he did to him, but for harming mankind. God was mad that mankind was harmed because of his action. And then the key point is that he explained that the seed of the woman, or mankind, us men and women, and the seed of Satan, including all of his supporters, angelic beings, and others, would always be at war. And if you understand that one point, you can understand much of the rest of the Bible narrative.